Alright, so hi everyone, my name is Eniolua Abidu-Denny. I'm a sophomore mechanical engineering major with a minor in mathematics. For my presentation, I'll be talking about the ethics and personal privacy issues when it comes to big corporations like Amazon, Facebook, or even like Apple in some cases. For an overview, the key issues I would like to discuss in my presentation would be how companies collect personal data and use that to monetize information by, advertising specific information to specific customers, along with questions about privacy, consent, and ethics. The focus of this presentation will be how does corporate data practices affect personal privacy for individuals, and what ethical responsibilities do companies have when it comes to our personal information. By the end of this presentation, ideally you will all understand the background behind personal privacy and why it's becoming an increasing issue, the risks that come with using our personal information and how that can be damaging to us, the benefits of them using our personal information, along with my personal opinion and a future outlook for how the trends regarding the use of our personal information could benefit and or derail our future, and also the main conflict, what I personally believe to be progress versus privacy. But to start, I would like to look at this chart that depicts what people are most worried about when it comes to using our personal information, more specifically like situations where we give out our personal information and how we feel concerned about that. The two most notable ones being online banking and online shopping. And if you notice that those are both situations we get to give money online, which is probably why it's the biggest concern, because that's detrimental financially to the individuals. But there's also more niche ones that on here, like our social media and who has access to that, or who gets information, because some people have their accounts hacked, and that's a lot of private information that's given out, and that's on that's on the company when it comes to who's able to get what or how protected our stuff is. So to start, a little background. The reason this is becoming a growing and increasing issue for our current population is because of the increase in who has access to technology, how efficient people can hack into different things, and just like how many people are putting their stuff on the internet. The more people that have access to technology, the more information there is, the more data there is on the internet, and the more that there are different people that are trying to get that data, that are trying to utilize that data for their own personal gain. So I like to talk about it as a world that is becoming built on data, as we are currently living in the age of information. So the main origin of this debate about privacy comes from a scandal with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica in 2018, where Cambridge used a lot of information that was on Facebook, our private information, to make their model for 2019 and their outlook for the upcoming year. And that raised a lot of safety concerns about who was getting our data and how our data was being sold to other companies for their own personal use. Not that it exactly has a negative impact on me or you as individuals, but it's more of a concern about who's getting what and what companies are doing with our private information. And it comes with the problem of, not that it's exactly wrong for companies to monetize our information, but it's more of the lack of awareness that they put out. Because obviously they have terms of services and they have different things in place to inform you about what's going on, but that's barred behind a 10-page terms of service that no one's going to read. So though it's there, it's made under the false pretense of free service, because there's nothing on there that's actually free. Like, to get into Facebook, you have to give up your name, number, address, email. So though it's free financially, there's some type of exchange being made. Sorry. A lot of the pros and cons of this come when you start thinking about how they use our information. Some companies use it for good purposes, like Apple, along with the Apple Watch. They use that to track different health things that you can use personally, like your heart rate, BMI, all types of just different things personally to see what's working for you, and track your gains or losses, or how much weight you're gaining or how much weight you're losing, and what exercises you're doing what, and how much mileage. And there's obviously whenever they have that personal data, what you're like searching for on the internet, they're able to target you more directly to help you find what you're looking for. Like on Amazon, if I were to go search a toy bear, they would find a way to like tell me more about tell me more about different types of bears, because that's just how their website works. And statistics show that Amazon makes 35% more profit based off of their targeted advertising. Some of the cons is that there's a lot of misleading things about what they're doing with your information that they're not very clear with, like selling that to other companies to use that same data, or just how unknowing it is, because obviously, like I said earlier, there's the terms and services, but it's not very clear what they're doing with that. And there's some companies like Apple that are very clear about it, like they have entire updates that are just based on your personal privacy, but other big corporations like Amazon and Facebook are it's a very murky line of what exactly they're doing with that. And there's also the fear of data breaches, as a lot more people are on the internet now, and some people are like trying to hack into your everyday information. Like I said earlier, people have their Instagrams hacked all the time, and that's a lot of information that's just out there. And there's not much as an individual that you can do to protect that other than to not be on Instagram. But at the same time, it's very difficult to have to restrict yourself from being able to use that due to someone else's lack of protection, which is where the companies kind of come at fault. And on top of that, there's also a degree of autonomy that's taken out of the whole looking for your own stuff. And because of that, companies are able to propagate certain things more. Like, for instance, if I'm Facebook and I have a deal with Nike, I can push a bunch of Nike's content, which is where another problem comes in, because it kind of hurts smaller business. And all of that is just because of their use of private information and how they can like target specific people for specific things. So where the main argument comes in again is the question of, does the benefit of them having that, where they can help you find certain things, is it worth the surveillance and the lack of trust and communication that comes with it? Where I, talk about the convenience versus consent, because obviously there's a convenience, but there's also a lack of consent of how that convenience comes to you. So I also like to give my personal opinion on the matter, where though I do think there is an ethical issue behind it, I don't think it's entirely wrong, because at the end of the day, I believe that people have it's their choice to use specific forms and platforms, because you technically don't have to shop on Amazon, you don't have to shop on Facebook. But to another degree, I think that for the people that do shop on there, it should be clear what they're getting into by shopping on there and what their personal data is being used for. So though I don't think it's exactly wrong ethically, I think there's ethical issues with it, but I don't think it's entirely wrong, like illegal, because obviously no one's getting arrested for it, it's not illegal, but I do think there's some ethical issues that can be improved upon, but nothing that would make it such that I would say not to shop on Amazon or not to shop on Facebook Marketplace or anything like that. So the question comes back to, is it worth it? Is the trade-off worth it? And again, I think yes, because there are certain things like the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation in the European Union, that regulates exactly what they can use your private information for and who they can give it out to or what it can be used for. And there are also like benefits to it again, like how they can help target ads and how they can use it for health, like data and just data science in general. And I think with slight improvements to the ethical design of the privacy by default and more transparency with what they're doing, it can be improved. So again, a couple things that I think would help to improve the whole issue behind it would be an increase in just morality. At the end of the day, it's human judgment to decide what to do with what you know and what you're given, and it's a trust thing. There are also, companies can also take a cut, which realistically, no company's gonna like willingly take a cut for the sake of their consumers, unless it backfires on them. The biggest thing I think would be this right here, prioritizing informed consent. Because obviously people are still going to use Facebook and Amazon, but if you can make it more aware of what they're getting into, though it may lose you some users, yes, it creates an increased degree of trust, which I think is important when developing a business, of course. And then also increasing decentralized management over the data, because obviously Amazon has all that data to themselves. and by increasing like who, not exactly who has access to that data, but who can monitor that data and who can give it out, it's less likely of situations where Amazon is secretly selling information to people without your knowing. So in conclusion, I don't necessarily think that it's completely wrong for companies to use personal data for their own gain. I do think that there are a couple issues that need to be improved upon, and with time, as they're obviously trying to develop better ways to regulate it, I think it's an issue that will be worked on and improved just naturally with time. So with that, do any of y'all have any questions, comments, or concerns?
Go ahead.
Do you think that AI could be implemented to summarize these lengthy terms and condition pages to make it more consumer friendly, to know exactly what information is being taken from and used by these companies?
Okay. I think that is a very good question, and I think that obviously AI can be used to summarize information as people do it for books and different questions. On one hand, I do think that's something I or you as an individual can go through and do. Look at the question, copy paste, get a summary of that individual section, and it is something that companies can look at to shrink down their terms and services. But there's also like legal things that they have to include in there that make it very long and very, not very difficult, but like more difficult to do that with. So I do think it's something that could be done, and it's definitely something that I can do, you can do as an individual to read it. But it's also another thing of the issue, like no one's gonna take the time or effort to do that. But if it was done on the company's end, I feel like if it's a very short thing that you can just read a quick sentence that's already in there whenever you like open the app, it makes it more enticing or more like less of a issue to read.
Gonna build on that. I pretty much had the exact same question. But like you said, the legalities that the company would hold with that. The AI paraphrased it in a way that it left out one thing important. So instead of that, do you think they could have an option at the bottom, such like, I know one of my textbooks has the option to have an AI paraphraser. Do you think they should have that just built into the website so that it can highlight the main points that you need to know while they still have all the legalities?
I do think that would be a great way of doing that. That's actually a very good point. I think that'd be a great way of doing that, but again, that would be at the discretion of the company. And as I said, more laws and more rules are being put in place. That is something that can come up because I would say the biggest issue with this is just about consent. Just informed consent. And though it's there, and it would be much easier if it was like condensed down into a different section, along with, as you said, like having both sections there. So not much I can do about that or you can do about that as individuals, but I think legally, if that was made into rules, that'd be very beneficial. Thank you.
I have no further questions.
Thank you.